Okay, so welcome everybody. So my intention is to work through a little bit of a yin flow when we get to the physical practice. So if you haven't already gathered your bolsters and blocks and stuff, please feel free to grab them. And then I'm just going to invite you to come to a position to get centered and grounded. We're going to do a little meditation together, and then we'll talk about the tarot for today. So you can do that lying down. You can be seated if you like. I'm just going to stay seated right here. Just find whatever props you need to get comfortable. Feel free to take a restorative pose if you want, just whatever works for you. And then start to settle into it. So that might mean closing your eyes. It might mean moving around a little bit or a lot if you're kind of finding that you need that right away. Taking a moment to notice what it feels like to deepen your breath, if that feels good or easy or challenging or like you haven't taken a deep breath in a while. And so much of what we do in this practice is really tap into the energies that are current, that are happening right now. The full moon is a part of that. Mercury retrograde, some of us are noticing happening as well. And we're also entering into the fall season, and I'm definitely feeling that weather-wise. We've started to get a pickup of wind. It's cooler here. The light has changed. And from an Ayurvedic perspective, Chinese medicine perspective, it's the season of wind, it's lungs. There's a relationship with grief there, and there's a relationship with letting go, which also matches up with the full moon. So, this is kind of a moment when we are shifting. There's a transitional moment to kind of letting go of whatever's been going on to prepare for the next season. And so much of that is held in your lungs. So just taking a few moments to focus on your breathing. You don't necessarily have to breathe any specific way unless that feels right for you. But just taking some time to really notice what's going on with your breath. And as you do, you're kind of bringing your parts into this moment, into your body, into this room. Taking a moment to acknowledge the land that you are on. And part of that experience of feeling into the season, the light, the time of year is a part of being in relationship with the land. I am a settler here on Plains Cree and Blackfoot land in Treaty 6 territory. And as you're feeling into your immediate relationship with the land that you're on, and also maybe your historical, cultural relationship with that land, just allowing yourself to feel it in your body, to be right here with it. and taking a last few breaths just to receive any messages that your body might be trying to communicate to you in terms of sensation, image, or emotion, or language. Sometimes we hear it. Okay, so when you feel ready, we're going to talk tarot for a little bit. So if you're seated, feel free to just stay as you are. You can open your eyes. If you want to move around a little bit or shake your body out, anything like that, feel free to do that. So I will just let you guys know, when I was working with the cards earlier, I was just kind of feeling into this group a little bit, and I pulled 3 cards for us. We're just going to talk about one together, and then I'll add to the story with the 3 cards, because it definitely feels like some of it, there's a message some of us may need right now, and you'll probably feel that right away as we look at this card. So this is just the card we're going to focus on. And in the little spread that I did, this card is in the future position. So it's kind of the energies that we're moving into. So I would love to know, as you're looking at this card, just what comes up for you. What do you notice about it? How do you feel when you look at it? How do you relate to this figure that you see? What do you notice?
I'm still processing it, but it's such a gorgeous card.
Mm-hmm.
It calms me.
Mm.
Yeah. I'm struck by like the fishbone, right? To me, it seems kind of somehow grounding for me. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I
Yeah,
really
so the
feel,
mood is, yeah, go ahead, Jane.
no, sorry, go ahead, the mood, yeah.
Yeah, I was just reflecting that back, just like the mood is sort of calm, and
Yeah.
there's something grounding about it, and very beautiful, which I absolutely agree with.
I agree with the grounding nature, but I really am reflecting at the background, which seems to be all things that are kind of permanently in flux. Like she has the water
Mm-hmm.
beneath her, the universe around her, and she's just really comfortable and still. And also sort of seems to be of a oneness with these things. Like it's hard to kind of tell where her dress ends and the water begins. And the bird on her wrist or on her hand seems
Mm-hmm.
to just have that like um it with the flowers in its beak. It's making me think of like Noah's Ark in a way, like that the bird going out and coming back with
Mm-hmm.
twigs calling for
Yeah.
land.
Oh, yeah.
Although that's my cultural background, not everybody else's. But that sort of in her hand is this grounding element. And I can't actually tell if she's sending it out or bringing it back because the colors of the flowers reflect her dress so beautifully. I'm not sure if she is generating the flower or if she is receiving it.
Mm-hmm.
And it
I
almost
love
looks
that.
like
Yeah.
veils are floating in the sky behind her.
Yeah, I think they might be hummingbirds, but they don't seem to
Okay.
have wings. So yeah, they could be whales or dolphins or something. That's image isn't super clear to me, even looking closely at the card. And same thing with the thing. I mean, it sort of makes me think of a heart, but it's not the
Yeah.
clearest. You know, it's one of those cards that likes to keep things a mystery. But yeah, I hadn't really thought about that before. Just what you said about her kind of being at one with the chaos behind her. It makes me think of one of the moon phase goddesses who has this quality of kind of being able to be still and in herself while there are like many, many people and things going on around her. It's just sort of like, it has a bit of the eye of the storm quality to it, but it's also this reminder that whatever chaos is going on around you, you still have yourself, right? It's like you can still be calm and in relationship with the chaos that's happening. And I hadn't thought about that detail as well, about the raven or crow or whatever it is bringing the flower back, and that kind of reminder of like, I think that really is well associated with this particular card, because in the story of Noah's Ark, when the bird brings back the twig, it's like, okay, the many, many days of the flood are over, and now we can start to return to the land. And it's like a signal that the traumatic time is coming to an end, and it's time to transition to something calmer and easier and better for everybody. And that's very much the energy of this card. So I don't know if that was something the artist intended necessarily, but I think that's so in alignment with the meaning of the card. Absolutely. Thank you for noticing that.
I also think, like, depending on which culture, the raven, you know, like in Haida, for example, that we're talking about the trickster, it's transformative. But in some, you know, Edgar Allan Poe and older English things, ravens are often associated with death.
Right.
But if it is transformation, you know, you have to have death to be born again, right? And then I really noticed that thing with what looks like where you would see a heart, and it almost seems to have a scar across there. I can't tell if that's what, but I see that as a crystal. It looks to me like the shape of really more like a crystal than a heart. So again, though, whether that is
just looking a bit closer at it, it looks like it's one of these figures. Is like, it's almost like if the hummingbird beak, if it's a hummingbird, it's like sipping from the nectar of whatever that is.
Okay, yeah, but the symbol of that, I don't know, maybe it's just oh yeah, when I see it closer, perhaps I don't see, but I originally saw that almost like a crystal shape. But I thought that was kind of interesting even in itself, like not being, you know, a heart shape, but if it is more of a crystal, is certainly something that is, it can be seen as hard, or it can also be seen as, you know, solidified and true. So I don't know.
And holding magic too. I mean, I think when I think about a crystal, that's what comes up for me, is that it's holding something precious and a little bit ethereal maybe, or sort of, magical. Yeah, absolutely. And just noticing that idea of, like, if it is hummingbirds, which I'm not, no wings, so I'm not really sure how to interpret them. But that idea of like sipping at the nectar of that, it's like there is something there that's nourishing to whatever these beings are. Yeah. So as I mentioned, the star is, its fundamental meaning is hope. And it really is about hope after things being really hard. So it is that coming through, it is the bird finding the twig, it is that, you know, having been through the season of death, the rebirth comes. And it's, the star is related to, at least for me, there's sort of an echo there of some of the early spring goddesses who come out in those days when, like, it's been really cold, deep winter, and like that first flower pops through the snow, or, you know, you start to see some of the ice melting, and like, it's just that very early kind of like first signs of spring kind of moment where you start to feel like, oh my God, maybe everything's going to be okay. And so I'll just share the other cards that came up for today as well. And just the feeling that I got when I was kind of doing my meditation around this group and kind of setting the intention of like, let's read the cards for this group, I was just feeling that, and, you know, I could be projecting sort of my own experience here too, but I was just feeling like things have been really hard and we need some hope, like that. And I thought of the star card as I was shuffling, which was so interesting that it actually did come up. But I was feeling like, you know, it's been a rough road for some of us, and we're really needing some signs that things are going to start to shift and start to be okay. We've also noticed in this group before that swords tend to come up a lot. So here we are again with our swords. So the card of the past is the Knight of Swords. And I'll just share a little bit of the cards just for reasons of time. We won't go through everyone together. But, you know, this is kind of an energy of someone who's like really on a journey, like really on a mission. He's got his sword, his horse is kind of like running, like going really fast. And the way that I'm reading this is like going into something with really good intentions, lots of good hopes, you know, putting everything behind it. And then, yeah, it didn't work out. So the next card is the Four of Swords, which is just this exhausted person who is just half in the water. Like there's this sort of half dead feeling, this incredible exhaustion that comes up. And then we have the star, which is this hope that comes after that. So I'm feeling like, and again, maybe this is just me, but you know, some of us have been like really trying at something, like really wanting something to work, and maybe taking a risk even that, you know, took a while to like get the courage to start going for. And then it just didn't work out the way that we wanted it to. And we have to kind of remember that swords is about thought, so it's not always about reality, right? So, you know, one of the things I think of with the bucking horse is I'm also ignoring some of the things that maybe I should be paying attention to because I'm so single-minded, kind of going towards this one thing. And the thing that is really kind of weighing down this woman in the water is essentially her thoughts. And there's also just an element of like really needing to rest, like really needing to recover from that experience, whatever it was, however long it took to kind of go through this thing. It's like, oh my gosh, I just can't get out of bed here. And that's something that happens around grief specifically. And it can obviously happen around illness, which is sometimes related to grief. And so there is this kind of recovery period that the way that I'm reading the cards today is that like that's what's happening for us now. Like we've been in this place of just not kind of having our energy back quite yet, or not being fully recovered from the loss of whatever it was we were trying to get to with this character. But then of course we have the star, which we just talked about. So it's really this feeling of like, you know, the rebirth after the death, like kind of starting to feel that energy coming back, being able to be at one with the chaos and the lessons that we've learned from whatever it is that happened to us that was really difficult. And being able to, like, the way I always think about this is like, it's not going back to the way things were before, it's going to a new place that is good and is healthy and is whole, and you know, there's lots of energy and space and things like that, but it's not about going back to the way things were before. So if, you know, whatever the project is or the thing is that you were going for in this way, you can go for it again, but maybe your strategy is going to be different this time, right? Especially your mental strategy, how you talk to yourself around it, your expectations around it, things like that. So how's that resonating for you guys? Does that feel relevant? Yeah, anything that you guys want to add about that, about the cards, or anything else? We can come back to this too as we sort of let it process in our movement.
So I pulled out my own set so I could look more closely at the details on this. And what I see is that this is an egg.
Can you guys see her? I spotlighted myself. Hold on one sec. There you go. Okay, go ahead, Danielle.
So under the raven is an egg, and she's like pouring out something that's also becoming part of her. Like and then her fishtail is in front of that. Like there's death and life happening all at the same time. Yeah, and then these little elements, like there's red behind her cloth, and there's the red, it's almost looks like a rose in detail. There's like a little bit more of a pattern to it. And then there's red somewhere else too. Oh, she's got these like antenna, like it's almost like she smeared herself with the death, which so I interpreted those as kind of like taking that on and like marking, you know how you have like war paint of like, this is something that like is now part of me. And just holding that, like it's part of the death and rebirth, and here I've taken it on, and I'm gonna move through, and she kind of looks like she's in the eye of that storm, like you were just saying with the Four of Swords, like in the middle of it where you're just down and waiting, you know, the craziness has happened, and then the rejuvenation will occur. Yeah,
beautiful. Yeah, thank you for that, Danielle. Yeah, absolutely, I love that. Yeah, so this feels like a nice card for us to get today. Hey, the star. Yeah, the one we needed maybe. Okay, so let's move with it a little bit, and then we can come back to this discussion afterwards as well if there are other things you want to share. Okay, so I'm just going to re-spotlight here. Okay. All right, so let's make our way into a child's pose, and we'll start moving from there. And if child's pose is not comfortable, if it doesn't work for you today, feel free to take any shape that does. We're going to get moving relatively quickly, but let's just take a moment to get into child's pose and just reconnect to our bodies. So if you are taking child's pose, you can have your knees wide, toes together. You can reach your arms forward. You can also have the hands reaching back, and just start to get back into your breath. So just to distill down some of those themes that we're working with today, we have a period of work and failure or loss, and then the shift and transition into hope and something better. And we're on the full moon today, and the full moon is really a time that is about letting go of whatever's been happening over the last cycle. We're also entering into the fall, so there's sort of a bigger cycle. There's the seasonal cycle as well as the moon cycle. And the fall is really a season of cleansing, releasing, letting go. So we are really beginning this transition that many of us are sort of maybe desperately needing. The energy is going to start to come back, and maybe today's practice is about aligning with that transition, aligning with the image of someone who is at one with the chaos, who knows how to stay grounded even when things feel uncertain around her. So I'm going to invite you to move when you feel ready to. Okay, and that could be any moment. And I'm going to invite you to keep your eyes closed if they are, and start to breathe. And let your breath move you. So I've just come up onto hands and knees, and I'm working with a little bit of cat and cow, but especially on the full moon, we may need a little bit of more intuitive movement. So if you can keep your eyes closed and just kind of see what your body wants to do, just go ahead and let it. If that feels a little strange or you just aren't quite sure what to do, cat and cow is perfect. Just inhaling into a little back bend and exhaling to round the spine. No rules here, okay? And I did send a playlist in your email earlier. If you want some music to help you do this, please feel free to start your playlist. Silence is great too. The breath has a rhythm you can follow. So just allowing yourself to enjoy the movement, whatever it is you're doing. We're kind of climbing up towards downward dog maybe. And again, keep moving in the way that feels intuitive to you there. So maybe it's bending one knee at a time, swaying the hips, rolling the head. Sometimes in a yoga practice, we can get a little stuck on the sort of ideal image of a pose and being still within that. It's actually so nice to kind of move outside of that rule and just kind of see what your body wants to do. Your body is often very intelligent. When we're really paying attention, it's relatively hard to injure ourselves, right? But there is some practice in trusting the body, learning how to follow its cues. And I'm just making my way up to standing forward bend now. Same principles, do it in your favorite way, knees really bent, feet really wide or legs straighter or narrower. It's all good. Just try to really listen to what your body wants and needs right now. And if that's stillness, that's perfect as well. Trust yourself above anyone else when it comes to your body. And then rising up. So I'm going to roll, bending my knees and curling slowly. If you have another way you'd rather come up, that's fine as well. Just gentle with your back. Okay, when you get to standing, just really soften your knees and your arms so you're nice and loose. And then allow your head to come forward. It's okay to let your back roll forward a little bit as well. And then gently flow over to one side, letting the shoulders come to. And then through the front and over to the other side. So nice, slow, luxurious, gentle semicircles. Head is kind of relaxed and heavy. Exploring those little areas of the neck that need a little release. I'm just going over to my last side once more. And then come through center once you're complete on the two sides and gently roll up to standing again. You can roll your shoulders a few times if that feels good, maybe including your elbows, maybe including your knees, bending them a little, just letting it be kind of a whole body movement. And then soften into relative stillness and standing. And if there's any other movements that you need or fidgeting or shaking, feel free to do that. And then place your hands over top of your heart. And take a nice deep breath into your hands. Soften your knees, hook your thumbs so the palms face forward, and then reach the arms up and a little bit back. Release the hands around behind your back, interlace your fingers. You can also hold your hips if holding the hands behind you is a little too far. Squeeze the elbows, lift the heart, maybe the gaze, and then bend the knees generously and fold down. Take a halfway lift, pressing the fist to the back of the room, heart forward, and then gently release the hands to the earth, or you could put them on blocks. Right leg is going to float to the sky any amount, and then step that foot back and lower down your knee. Reach your arms up to the sky. You can hook your thumbs again if that works for you. And then straighten your front leg and bring your hands down to the earth, or again to the blocks is great. You can untuck your back toes here, just a little bit of a bend in the knee. And we'll take 3 breaths, inhaling to wave the heart forward. Exhaling to melt. 2 more times. So this sequence is called Hridaya Namaskar, heart salutation. Full breaths. And then lengthen your heart forward and then step back so that you're on your knees at the back of your mat. I'm just widening them a little bit and tucking the toes under. And then the hands can come forward, bum kind of up and slightly back so that you can melt your heart towards the earth. Forehead or chin might come down. You can keep them floating as well. And if it feels good, you could add a little rock from side to side, like a hammock for your heart. Anahatasana is often translated as heart melting pose. Literally, it means heart chakra pose. Anahata. Okay, inhale, and then as you next exhale, come to your belly. If you're not on your belly today, just stay on your hands and your knees. You can return to cat and cow. If you're okay on your belly, take your fingertips wide to the right and to the left. Point your toes. Lift your heart as you inhale. And as you exhale, gently melt down. Inhale to rise, then look left and dip your right shoulder. Come up through center, look right and dip your left shoulder, keeping your thumb still. Come up through center, gently release down to your belly and make your way back to downward dog or child's pose. And those of you that are feeling that kind of full moon, like I got to get some of this energy out, feel free to add a vinyasa if you want to. A vinyasa is basically an in-between sequence. It has a classic form, but there are lots of ways to do it. Okay, one way is coming forward to plank, taking a little push-up on or off the knees, and then pulling through to cobra or upward dog. And then returning to downward dog, which is where we'll meet. Okay, and then on your next inhale, take your right leg high to the sky, just as high as feels good. And then do your best to step it through. Feel free to grab it and pull it forward if you need to. Back knee comes down, hook the thumbs, rising up into your lunge, gently pressing the hips forward. Nice, and then hands come down, straight front leg, you can untuck your back toes. Lengthen as you inhale. And fold. 2 more. Try to really let your breath flow. And then look forward, bend into your front leg, walk the hands forward, you can use the blocks, and we're just gonna work that back leg up into the sky. It's fine if you need a couple little hops to do that, it doesn't have to go very high. And then on your exhale, let the feet come down beside each other, parallel. Bend your knees generously, hook your thumbs again, rise up through standing, reaching the arms up to the sky. And then interlace the fingers behind your back. Hug the elbows, lift the heart. As you exhale, bend the knees and fold down. Halfway lift, heart forward, fist back. Exhale, hands lightly come down to the blocks or the floor. Left leg is going to float up to the sky again. Any amount is great. And then gently step it back and lower down your knee. Hook the thumbs, rising up. And then straighten your front leg and bring your hands down to the blocks of the floor. 3 breaths here. Take your time. Don't be afraid to bend your right knee. And then look forward and step your front foot back so that you're on your knees, toes are tucked under if your knees are okay with that. I like to widen my knees a bit. I find it's just a bit more comfortable that way. Hands come forward, heart melts. Maybe rock your chest a little bit. Inhale, and then as you exhale, come all the way to your belly or your hands and your knees if you're not on your belly today. And if you're on hands and knees, just taking cat-cow. If you're on your belly with me, point the toes, lift your heart. Exhale, melt. Inhale to rise up. Look right, dip your left shoulder. Up through center. Look left, dip your right. Up through center. Gently release down and make your way back to downward dog or child's pose. And then if you want to add that vinyasa, if you feel like you need that, please feel free to do it. Okay, and we're meeting in downward dog. Catch an inhale, the left leg is going to go up to the sky, no rush. Okay. And then step that foot through. Back knee comes down, hook the thumbs, rising up. And then straighten the front leg, bring the hands down. Last time, 3 breaths. Beautiful. And then you can look forward, bend into the front leg, walk your hands forward. And then you might need to hop your back foot forward a little bit. You might be able to just kick it up to the sky. And then on your exhale, both of your feet will come down to the earth, bending the knees, hooking the thumbs, rising all the way up. And then place your hands over top of your heart. Take a moment to breathe and feel. Okay, we'll do just a little bit more movement and standing, and then we're going to come down to our yin. So let's hook the thumbs again, soften the knees, reach the arms up, but not so much back, just straight up to the sky. And then this time side bend to the right. Come up through center and then side bend to the left. Come up through center and then step your right foot back behind you for triangle. So the foot's going to land. You know, you can sort of adjust your stance, heel to heel alignment or front heel to back arch. I like my back toes turned in a little. Tipping the hips slightly forward and then to the back of the mat, reaching forward and taking a nice little triangle here. Hugging the shoulders together on the back, nice and long through both sides of the neck. Sometimes in triangle, even just as it is, I like to just relax my head for a moment and kind of see if there's a little bit of a release there. Inhale, and then we're swimming down to wide-legged forward fold. So bringing the hands down and then along the long edge of the mat as we parallel the feet. You might need to widen them a little bit. Soften the knees, walk the hands forward and take essentially Anahatasana in the upper body. So the fingertips are on the mat, the heart is melting back, the knees are bent and the weight is working back towards the heels. You can also rock your chest a little side to side here, just like we did in Anahatasana. And then bringing the hands back up underneath the shoulders. Turn towards the top of your mat again, and then just softly step forward. Lengthen halfway. Exhale to fold, and then rise up in your favorite way. So you can roll up here, you can bend the knees and sweep up. Take your time. Soften the knees, hook the thumbs, rise up. And then side bend to the left. Up through center, side bend to the right. Up through center. Gently release the hands and step back with your left foot for triangle. Tip the hip back. So ideally the knee, the hip and the toes are all facing the same direction. Inhale, and then we're gonna fold down to wide-legged from here. So hands down along the long edge of the mat, parallel your feet. You might wanna widen them a little bit. Just make sure that they're on the same plane. You can do that same Anahatasana shape here, walking the fingertips forward, melting the heart. You can fold a little deeper into the forward bend with the crown of the head coming towards the ground. You can interlace your fingers around behind your back. Some people, that's their favorite variation. And you could also play with a little headstand here if that's in your practice. Again, sometimes during the full moon, we have like lots of energy to work with. Sometimes it feels like the opposite of that. Some of us menstruate around the full moon, and inversions during menstruation, they don't hurt. They're not gonna harm you, but they just might not feel as good. Sometimes our core is not as activated around menstruation. Okay, gently release your hands. We can all give the head a shake, whether you did anything related to headstand or not. Take a halfway lift, turn back to the top of your mat and gently step forward. Take a halfway lift and then exhale out your mouth. Nice. And then we're gonna sit down. And if you have a bolster to sit on, I don't know if it'd be that convenient to kind of grab all your props like that, but we're gonna sit down on the bolster, and ideally if you have a couple blocks, have them nearby. Okay, so we're gonna shift from here into a little yin practice. We're gonna do pigeon. So if you wanna change your playlist or turn it off if you've got it going, please feel free to do that. Okay, and then let's make our way into pigeon as you're ready. So I'm sitting on my bolster, a little bit of mat in front of me, most of my mat behind me, leaning to the right, taking the left leg back. If you can, straighten the leg. If that doesn't work for you, you can do this shape, which is called 90-90 pose. But if you can, wobble your hips so that they're level on the bolster, and your heel will probably come in towards your groin a bit. Press into the blocks or your hands, lift your heart. You might want to take a moment to press into the top of the back foot, lifting the kneecap up, and really lengthen your heart. That's going to be a bit of a stretch for your hip flexor. And then we can settle down into pigeon, and that's going to move the stretch more into your right hip. So you can have your elbows on the blocks. You can use a block under your forehead or your chest or both. You can have your hands on the ground and use your fists to support your head, just whatever works for you here. We're going to try to support it so that we can kind of soften into the pose a little bit. There should be no pain here. If there's pain, adjust, and feel free to take any hip opener that does work for you if this one isn't your one. And see if you can just breathe deeply into what's happening for you here. Last couple breaths here. And if you want to sigh or make some sound, feel free. I find pigeon can be really wonderful for moving things out that might have been a little stuck inside. Whew. And then when you're ready to come up, you can gently press into your hands, lean into your right hip, and bring your back leg around to the front. Windshield wipers can be nice after that. I also often like to straighten my legs and shake them a little bit that way, like a foot windshield wiper. And then when you're ready, we'll come to the second side. So leaning to the left hip, bringing the right leg around the back. Maybe pausing here, especially if you don't have a bolster or a prop that you can support your hip on. 90-90 might be better. Okay, working on straightening out that leg, getting your shin nice and even to the ground, so we don't want the knee to be floating. You can shift forward and back a little bit just to find that spot that works for you. Should be no pain in the knee. And then if you'd like, you can pause up here, pointing those back toes, pressing the top of the foot into the mat so much that the kneecap lifts, and drawing your heart forward and up so you get that lovely hip flexor stretch. And hold that as long as you feel like you need it. When you're ready to come down, settling into your pigeon shape, sleeping pigeon specifically. And the more props you have, the more you can relax. If you're not working with props, you need to just hold yourself up a little bit more. And here what we're doing is really softening sort of beyond the muscles into the fascia by really gently holding the pose for a little bit of time. And again, try to just stay really steady and deep with your breath. Notice if you find yourself holding your breath and see if you can come back to it. A couple more breaths here. When you feel ready to come out of the shape, you can place your hands down on the mat, gently rise up, lean over onto that left hip, bring the back leg around to the front. And you can take again these windshield wipers. You can give your legs a shake. And then shift off your bolster and just move it back behind you. If you don't have a bolster, I'll give you some options in a moment. Okay, if you do have a bolster, still two options. One is you can have the bolster just right behind you like this, depending on how long your spine is. You might want it right up against your bum. I have a longer spine, so I'm just moving it away a little. And I want to come lay back on it so that my shoulders drop off the top edge. I may or may not want something supporting my head here. I think it feels good for me today to not do that. Some people really love this one. For others, it's quite uncomfortable. So option 2 is to take the bolster longwise. Most people like this one. And you lay back on it, same sort of idea. You can have soles of the feet together, knees open wide, or legs flopped out long is great as well. If even this bothers your lower back, you can elevate the top edge of the bolster with a block and or put something underneath your bum, like a low cushion, and that will tend to make it more comfortable. Okay. If you don't have a bolster, you could roll a blanket underneath your back. It'll be subtler, but it's still the same idea with the bolster widthwise. Or you could use almost any of your props if you're just laying back. Like the block, for example, you would just put it in between your shoulder blades. And again, you may or may not want something underneath your head. I probably would with this block. So again, same idea, just a little bit of elevation, a small cushion, whatever you've got is fine. Okay. So Anahata, the heart chakra, heart melting. The heart and lungs tends to be where we store our grief. And so again, we're in this practice of just allowing ourselves to breathe deeply and trusting that as the practice of supporting our systems, releasing whatever we may be holding on to, and preparing for this transition into a lighter, easier, more grounded, maybe even happier season. So over the next few moments, we will be sorry guys, I lost you there for a second. Can you guys still hear me? Can you hear me? Okay. Can you guys hear me yet? You can now? Okay, great. Sorry about that. Okay, so we're transitioning to Shavasana. Okay, if you haven't already. We'll take the next little while to make that transition into our Shavasana. So if you're wanting to stay in that open-hearted shape, that's totally welcome. If you want to complete your practice with some sort of movement or shape before you rest, that's welcome. Sometimes it's nice also to do a little reflection, a little journaling. Please feel free to take a few moments to do that. When and if you feel ready, just finding that really nice, comfortable position where you could rest fully. So for most of us, that's laying on the back, maybe with a bolster under the knees, but wherever works for you is perfect. And whenever you get there, take another deep breath, and then you can just let go of any conscious thought, conscious breath, just coming to a place of rest. So take a moment to notice how you're feeling right now. And if you're needing to stay a little bit longer, feel free to stay as long as you'd like. And if you feel ready to make your way out of your Shavasana, you can begin to wiggle your fingers and your toes. Maybe take a stretch. Gently draw in your knees and roll over to one side. And then you can make your way up to a comfortable seat. And if it feels right for you today, place your hands over the top of your heart. Gently bowing your mind to your hands, taking a moment to honor and acknowledge whatever it took for you to get to your practice today. however you were feeling the energies of the season, the moon, whatever has been happening for you in your life. Honoring and acknowledging the long and complex lineage of teachers that is with us in our practice, and honoring the sacredness of the land that we practice on. And thank you for sharing that practice with me.